Coming up on Arirang News, the U.S. drug maker Pfizer says its coronavirus vaccine is 90% effective, a result hailed around the world as a major breakthrough, sending global stocks soaring. South Korean President Moon Jae-in will be taking part in a series of meetings this week with leaders in the Asia-Pacific region and signing a long-anticipated regional trade deal on Sunday. And South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa is in Washington, meeting with her counterpart Mike Pompeo, also likely making contacts with officials who could fill positions in a Joe Biden administration. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The American drug giant Pfizer says its COVID-19 vaccine candidate is more than 90% effective. Its CEO calling it a great day for science and humanity. In the U.S., it's expected to take several weeks to get emergency approval to use it, but its effectiveness, according to Dr. Fauci, is extraordinary. Lee Seung-jae has the details.
With over 50 million COVID-19 cases reported so far, the world is in dire need of a working vaccine. The latest announcement by Pfizer is a welcoming one, as the American biopharmaceutical company announced Monday that its COVID-19 vaccine may be more than 90% effective based on its early and incomplete test results, which nevertheless bring some much-needed optimism. The news comes from an analysis of a study involving over 43,000 volunteers, 42% of whom come from diverse backgrounds. Each participant received 2 injections 21 days apart. Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech says the results from 94 evaluable cases of COVID-19 show the vaccine is more than 90% effective, much higher than the U.S. FDA minimum effectiveness bar of 50%. The vaccine is the first in development to have data proving to exceed the minimum. With the announcement, WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus took to Twitter on Monday, calling the results encouraging, while sending a salute to scientists around the world who are developing vaccines. The WHO Senior Advisor Bruce Aylward, while addressing the WHO's annual Ministerial Assembly, also called Pfizer's Phase 3 trial very positive. Tedros believes a COVID-19 vaccine may be rolled by March next year to the most vulnerable and could fundamentally change the course of the pandemic, which has so far killed more than 1.26 million people worldwide. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa met on Monday in Washington with her U.S. counterpart Mike Pompeo. Seoul's foreign ministry says the two reaffirmed their country's alliance for co-prosperity and the Korean peace process. They also discussed regional and global issues, as well as how they've been managing COVID-19 without completely closing their borders. Also discussed was the race for the post of Director General at the World Trade Organization. The race is still ongoing, and South Korea's Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee is one of the 2 candidates. It's expected that Kang will also be meeting with lawmakers and scholars who could end up with roles in a Biden administration. President Trump has fired his defense secretary, Mark Esper, though it's not clear exactly why. In his place, Trump has appointed Christopher Miller, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. Hong Yu has more.
Mark Esper has been terminated. That was the tweet on Monday from U.S. President Donald Trump that sealed Esper's fate. He added he was appointing Christopher Miller, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, as his acting defense secretary. The move comes 2 days after President Trump was projected to have lost his re-election bid to Joe Biden, leaving him with a little over 2 months left in office. Speculation has been swirling since June that Esper could lose his job for opposing President Trump over his decision to deploy military troops in Washington, D.C. to quell rowdy demonstrations against police brutality. Officials have said Esper knew he was on the brink of being fired and had pre-written a resignation letter weeks ago. Before this encounter, Trump is known to have given Esper the nickname Yesper due to his tendency to always side with his decisions. Shortly after President Trump's tweet, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi released a statement saying Esper's abrupt firing is evidence Trump is intent on using his final days in office to sow chaos. Trump, who has not conceded the U.S. presidential election, continues to make accusations of voter fraud. Opinions vary among Republicans, but Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell during his floor speech on Monday sided with Trump, saying that it is within his rights to look into allegations of irregularities. Meanwhile, U.S. media outlets say Pentagon officials are concerned about Trump beginning a new operation against his adversaries such as Iran during the remainder of his term. 홍유, Arirang News.
The countries of ASEAN and their partners, including South Korea, have a series of meetings lined up for later this week. President Moon Jae-in will be taking part in them, seeking support for building peace on the Korean peninsula. The highlight on Sunday will be the signing of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP. Kim Min-ji reports.
President Moon Jae-in will take part in a string of virtual meetings with ASEAN members later this week to discuss ways to step up regional cooperation amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
During the ASEAN-related meetings, President Moon is expected to express his commitment to join the global efforts for economic recovery and cooperation in healthcare and measures to overcome COVID-19.
At the South Korea ASEAN Summit on Thursday, Moon is expected to discuss his government's new Southern Policy Plus strategy, which seeks to bolster ties with ASEAN members in various areas, including healthcare. On Friday, Moon will sit down with the leaders of countries along the Mekong River, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand, to discuss ways to deepen their ties. The meeting is the second of its kind after the inaugural session in Busan last year. On Saturday, South Korea will be joined by Japan and China for the ASEAN Plus 3 summit. It will be the first time that President Moon will officially meet, albeit virtually, with Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga since he took office. They'll be followed by the East Asian Summit that brings together 18 countries, including the U.S., Russia, Australia, India, and New Zealand. There, Moon is expected to highlight efforts to achieve denuclearization and peace on the Korean peninsula. On Sunday, Moon will take part in the signing of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP. It's a free trade deal involving 15 countries, the 10 ASEAN members, South Korea, China, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, which combined make up about a third of the world's population. The deal is expected to revitalize South Korea's trade and investment, as well as diversify its export partners. Seoul's top office says Moon will likely stress the importance of free trade and economic cooperation during the RCEP talks. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for making time today.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, stocks were sharply higher on Wall Street, also in Europe overnight. The Dow closing almost 3% higher, though it was up quite a bit more than that during the session. Good news on the coronavirus vaccine made by Pfizer. What's happening in the global markets, and what's your outlook?
Yes, as of yesterday, the European market showed the biggest rally on Monday. If you look at the DAX index, it was up by close to 5%. Some of the European markets up 8%. In general, most of the markets were up around 5% plus. Clearly, this was because of the news that the COVID-19 Pfizer vaccine, it is effective, saying 90% in preventing COVID-19. And if that's the case, then people are assuming that the economic activity by the individuals would pick up again, and that the airline traffic will pick up and overall economic activity will become normalized. And if that's the case, then most of the markets were expecting to be having a very big rally. Clearly, that was the case for the U.S. market as well. Initially, NASDAQ was showing a big rise. On top of that, most of the other indices, such as Dow Jones and the S&P, were all rising by a significant amount. But as of close of yesterday, NASDAQ actually fell more than 1%. It closed by about 1.5% drop. But whereas the Dow was up 3% and S&P was up 1.8%. And also, if you look at the small and mid cap, it was up around 5%. So clearly, there's some changes and shift of the favor in terms of the market sectors. And if you look at these large the tech-related sectors, it is showing corrections, and any of these untech-related industries, because of the COVID-19, if it's removed from the picture, then these companies' earnings growth are not going to be there. That's what market is kind of expecting. Whereas any other indexes and any other sectors that performed poorly in the last 6 months, including airlines, hotels, etc., these were the ones that showing the biggest rise. Also, the financial sector showed a significant rise, and most of these rise were not like 1 to 2%. It was more like 5 to 10% rise specifically for individual stocks. Whether or not this kind of trend will continue in the future, that I'm not sure. But in any case, if we do think that the economic recovery is coming, then we should be gradually investing into more of economic sensitive sectors and companies. And particularly, we think that looking at the value, small and mid-cap companies would be quite interesting strategy at the current point in time. Nevertheless, we think that we still like the tech sector. It's just that the level of the growth is going to be relatively less than previous expectation. So I think that we need to rebalance some of the portfolio in the future.
Well, Korean stocks were up and down today, but in the end, the Kospi did have a small gain for the 7th session in a row. The Kosdaq was down quite a bit, though. What happened there?
Right. I think that it was, following the suit of what happened to U.S., and that the U.S. is talking about how they want any of the exporting companies to build the plant within USA, and therefore, if that's not there, then the level of the tariff might be quite high. So that was the kind of same strategy as what Trump has made in the past. So Biden being the new president, I think that people were expecting, hoping that some changes will come, but still I think that the pressure for the exporters remains to be quite high. And on top of that, if you look at the currency movement, with the U.S. dollars weakening and Korean won appreciating, so the price competitiveness of the Korean exporters were actually going down because of the won appreciation. So all that kind of resulted into some of the correction in the market, but Kospi did go up slightly because U.S. markets were so strong. But as for the Kosdaq, it was down more than 1%. In any case, what we need to watch closely is that how much of the currency movement will happen, and also how economic recovery can happen relative to other countries. We do think that the Korea is one of the cheapest market relative to any other developed market. And with the current interest rate environment, we think that the Korea will continue to receive foreign direct investment as well as a foreign indirect investment. So therefore, market should continue to do well over the next 12 months.
Well, you mentioned the Korean currency, how it's getting stronger, and in fact, it's the strongest it's been against the dollar in almost 2 years, or perhaps the dollar's at its weakest. What's driving the move in this exchange rate, and what does it mean for Korea?
Right. I think we got to look at the U.S. And U.S., if they're going to come up with the very aggressive boosting measure, the debt to GDP ratio of government will rise to 120% plus by year 2023. So if that's the case, people are expecting that the currency would continue to depreciate for U.S. dollar index, while that will have a so-called appreciation impact on the Korean won. And as you said, Korean won has hit 11.15 today. We think that that kind of gradual appreciation would probably most likely the case over the next couple of years. However, though, if the currency is moving in a direction that is not going to be so aggressive to appreciate, meaning that it goes down to, say, below 1,000, but rather right now 11.15 and it goes to 1,100 and then gradually going down over the next 2 years by somewhere between 2 to 5%. I think that that's reasonably okay for Korea, because domestic consumption will pick up while the export competitiveness will not be too much damaged because of the price increase. All in all, we think that the Korea is in a good position for foreign direct investment or foreign investors buying Korean equities. and the economic recovery is most likely if the Pfizer this vaccine works. So all in all, we think that Korea is in a very good environment despite the Korean won appreciation. It's just the question is that which sector we need to focus on. We still like the tech sector and the export related, but we like the sector that has quite a bit of production base in U.S. and that includes the electric cars, the alternative energies, and electronic sector, semiconductor sector. So all in all, I think that Korea looks quite good at the current point in time.
All right, Mr. Yu, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.